March 1941. The two German battleships Scharnhorst and Gneisenau are roughly halfway through what is known as Operation Berlin, a 5-month-long operation by the German Kreigsmarine to sink as many Allied merchant ships as possible. The two battleships were particularly dangerous and a constant thorn in the side of the British for the first few years of the war. Both ships would eventually be put out of action, but in 1941 they were clearly still very much a threat. These two ships were essentially laying the groundwork for what was meant to be the breakout operation for the Bismarck, which would sail into action just 2 months later. But the two ships had strict orders. Whilst they were entitled to engage convoys, they had strict orders to avoid action with enemy capital ships. And as such, on at least 2 separate occasions, perhaps even 3, the two German sister ships ran away from convoys that were escorted by capital ships. The first and most well-known case is when they ran into the Revenge-class battleship HMS Malaya, escorting... which convoy was it? HX 104? 106? I forget what the proper number was. Even though the Malaya was an old and particularly not very well looked after ship, these two ships still ran away because Malaya may have been old, but it doesn't mean it wasn't deadly. Sometime later, they nearly ran into HMS Rodney, one of the ships that ended up putting the Bismarck down, and on the 7th of March 1941, they ran into the Queen Elizabeth-class battleship HMS Malaya. Now, this is something that I didn't know about until recently, and I'm now curious to try it out, using the World War II ship mod for sea power, naval combat of the missile age. Yes, this game is technically meant to work around things like, well, the Kiev-class aircraft cruiser, or, if we can find the proper things, the California-class missile cruiser. Things from the Cold War, ships that never really saw combat against one another. But these ships, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau, definitely did see combat, just not against Malaya. So how do these ships compare? Well, let's have a look at Malaya. World War I vintage Queen Elizabeth-class battleship, the first form of fast battleship, essentially, capable of 24 knots, armed with 8 15-inch guns, the heaviest caliber guns available at the time, pretty much. These 381mm weapons, or is it 380? I can never remember. It says 380 here. Have a maximum range of 16 nautical miles in this mod. That is probably substantially less than what HMS Warspite achieved during the Battle of Cape Matapan. But this is probably a pretty reasonable range for these weapons. On the other hand, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau were fairly new warships. Only a few years old by the time of this, well, lack of action. One might consider them underarmed for their time, and to the point that it is argued whether they were really battleships or just battle cruisers, because they only had 283mm weapons, or 11-inch guns, weapons that would have been typical of a World War I era German dreadnought, but for such a ship as Scharnhorst, built during the time that ships were typically being armed with 14, 15 and 16-inch guns, these weapons did not seem all that potent. But they have quite a high range in the mod, 22.1 nautical miles. They also have a pretty substantial secondary battery of, I can't remember how many So they're like 12 150mm guns with a maximum range of 12.4 nautical miles. They also have a battery of 105mm dual-purpose guns. Malaya, on the other hand, has... This is well, it's not really Malaya. I think this is more of HMS Warspite's model. So maybe this is not quite Malaya, but it's close enough. She has 8 152mm guns in barbettes and 8 102mm 4-inch guns in a handful of twin gun turrets. These have substantially less range than the similar guns on Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. How do these two ships compare? Well, one-on-one, it's hard to tell, but these two ships could easily have taken on Malaya and probably have won. But the cost would have been too high had even one of the ships been damaged, or potentially even sunk. Because at the time, that would have counted as half of That would have counted as half of Germany's battleship fleet being sunk or put out of action in one go. How is this going to work then? Well, I've got them facing towards each other, just outside of Malaya's range. Let me just check exactly how far they are. Looks like 16.5. So it will take a short amount of time for them to get within 16 nautical miles, but I think we better move them just a bit closer, just to make this a little bit more fair towards Malaya. And this way it should be, yes, well within range now. So now we just have to rely on the radar systems to pick each other up. We shall put them on weapons free. Radars are on. Weapons free, radars on. And speaking of the radars, let's have a look at what they have. Malaya has Type 281 air search radar, typically used to detect aircraft, and Type 273 surface search radar, S-band, 24.8 nautical miles, so she should be able to pick them up. Scharnhorst and Gneisenau have Sumatra ESM electronic optics, and a whole mounted sonar apparently. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it appears they do not have access to a radar, which could put the early engagement in Malaya's favour. But these two German battleships do have access to something else, the Arado AR-196 float plane. Used for reconnaissance, this aircraft will be able to pick up the British battleship in case they don't immediately detect her with, well, their seemingly lack of radar. So let's see how this plays out. So here we are in the battle / scenario / whatever, and I have indeed confirmed these ships do not have radar. It's not a mistake. So these ships will have to launch their float planes to detect Malaya. I believe Malaya might also have a Supermarine Walrus float plane of her own, but in the meantime, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau have to launch their Arados. No, they've detected it visually, but it cannot be identified. So, Gneisenau, launch your float plane. Scharnhorst, launch your float plane. We shall... Oh, it has been detected, and she has fired. So now we can get these two ships.
Engage track 7001.
Gneisenau, please, thank you.
Engaging
Open
track
fire.
7001. Salvo fire.
Now they're going to fire a ranging shot, so they've fired one of their barrels. They'll wait until the shell falls, see how it falls, if it needs adjustment, and then they will fire as the planes are launched.
Roger, turn 1-3. Roger, go to altitude. Roger, turn. Roger, go to altitude 3-0-0.
Scharnhorst beginning to swing to starboard to bring her Kaiser turret into action, as she has confirmed her shells have fallen, of 4 turrets, firing as the first 15-inch shells just miss. Meanwhile, Gneisenau is turning to port, bringing her turret Kaiser into action. I believe her shells are still falling. As for Queen Elizabeth, Malaya, all 4 turrets have been brought to bear. They are out of secondary range, so we cannot bring the 150mm secondary battery into effect. 4 turrets have fired, more 15-inch shells falling, and it looks like that Malaya is targeting Scharnhorst. This is beautiful. It's like a reverse pincer maneuver or something. Turrets. Anton and Bruno firing, and as is turret Kaiser. And fairly short reload on these 11-inch guns, whereas Queen Elizabeth has something like a about a 30-second reload on her 15-inch guns, but they should theoretically hit harder as 11-inch shells. Oh, there we go, we've just seen a hit onto the Walrus hangar. And this is 18 11-inch rifles firing at a ship that has only 8 15-inch rifles. Looks like there's no critical damage to the ship. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look at the damage. It is light damage. Something has been destroyed. Mainly anti-aircraft weaponry. 2-pounder guns. Pom-poms. There's more shells falling. 2 German battleships still maneuvering. More 11-inch rounds going out.
Hit track 7001.
And that just tells us the Malaya has taken a hit. We can see it on the torpedo bulge there, so the ship may well be flooding. I don't know what all these numbers mean yet, but yes. Doesn't look like there's much appreciable damage to the Malaya yet. Oh, there's a hit right on the deck there. Right in front of a turret. And another shell hit on the forecastle. You can see it right there. Another shell has just hit the belt armor, and another one. Looked like it hit the exact same place, and there. Oh, that we just seen. Scharnhorst has just taken a couple of hits. There's one massive hole on the stern and another on the bow, and the ship is slowing substantially. Oh, she's on fire. Slowed to 5 knots due to some flooding.
Hit track 7001.
More shells hitting Malaya as the Germans, oh, they're starting to zone in now. Oh, and we've got Of course, I see what's happening. The 102mm guns are engaging one of the Arados, and the 152s are inexplicably engaging the other, which is not possible. It's something that the mod needs to fix. These guns should not have any anti-aircraft capability whatsoever. Except these ones. Scharnhorst has managed to regain a little bit of speed, up to 10 knots. Damage control says there's slight flooding. Damage in the magazine, very minor at the moment. We have damage control on automatic, and it looks like they are dealing with the flood and the damage to the magazine. This is damage that could still put the ship out of action, potentially, but so far nothing substantial. As for Gneisenau, has not been targeted, and as such is completely unaffected. More 11-inch shells are striking Malaya.
Roger, turn.
We shall get the float planes out of here. Still too far for our secondaries to engage. Another shell hits. Oh, and another looks like that hit. Oh, big hits. That could be turret C. No. X turret? That's A, that's B, that's X, that's Y maybe? I can never remember. That should be something like C turret. Oh, no, it looks like both of the aft turrets are still in action, even though one of the turrets definitely took a hit. Lots of destroyed anti-aircraft guns, and the ship is clearly on fire. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select the ship this way and see exactly what is damaged. Propulsion is affected, lightly damaged. HACS, lightly damaged. Weapon magazine damaged. It's focusing seemingly on the Mark 38 gunfire control system as another shell hits the bridge. This ship is now under heavy fire. Meanwhile, Scharnhorst has picked back up to 15 knots. The damage largely dealt with. Still some very slight flooding. Looks like the ship will still have to dock for some minor repairs at this point. Gneisenau, of course, still at full speed. Malaya at 10 knots, taking hits constantly. On fire. Oh, another hit. Looks like it's hit the torpedo bulge. Yes, there's a big hole there. And it has damaged the 15cm magazines, and the ship is on fire. But it looks like it's been dealt with very quickly. Malaya, on the other hand, is not so lucky.
On station.
32-second reload for these 15-inch guns. The Germans are still... what's the word? A bit out of date. Well, not out of date. Not remembering all of my naval terminology. The shells are falling short and going long at the same time. More shells missing. Fire coming in from two different angles as the two Scharnhorst class battleships get further apart. You can see Gneisenau off in the distance over there, firing. And there's Scharnhorst. Oh, another hit! Malaya's in big trouble now. I think they hit turret X. Rudder damage, 20mm destroyed. Fire is in the red. That is a serious fire. Lots of systems minorly damaged. The only things that's been destroyed so far are 20mm anti-aircraft guns. But this ship is bound to take more, as we've just taken another hit, and there's another fire. and now the 4-inch guns have been damaged. Weapon magazines for some of the it says 127mm, that's definitely for the 4-inch guns. HACS has been knocked out, and one of the 4-inch guns has now just been knocked out. This ship is getting low in the water towards the stern. Another hit under the waterline. 15-inch guns are still firing. Scharnhorst still lower speed than usual, but has not taken many more hits. Now the Malaya did fire. More 11-inch rounds going out. Now, the advantage that Malaya has is she can technically well, what's the right word? She can outlast these two ships, as she has, at this point, 672 380mm rounds remaining. Scharnhorst and Gneisenau only started with 450. They're down to nearly half of what they can carry, and the Malaya is still going. At this rate, they'll have to get closer and start using their torpedoes, which is not a good idea, because their range is only 4.3 nautical miles. But at that point, you can get sucked in close enough to start peppering it with the secondary guns, but you know, at that point it's pretty useless. You should just get out of there. And it sounded for a moment that Malaya could be having engine issues. I heard her engines faltering. Propulsion's still minor damage, still grey and working as expected. The fire is no longer red serious on the stern, but it's yellow medium risk in the centre of the ship. And oh, there we go, we've had another hit on Scharnhorst, and her speed has decreased by another 5 knots. And we can see another hit just between these two secondary turrets here. But for every hit that Malaya is able to plant onto Scharnhorst, she's taking easily twice that in return. And of course, Gneisenau is just completely untouched at this stage. In fact, Malaya's getting close enough that soon enough the 150mm secondaries could come into play here. Another hit just taken. Fire is now serious. Mark 38 gunfire control system is seriously damaged and likely not functional at this stage. The rudders have now been knocked out. We have a non-functioning propeller shaft. And is that... Nope, the 380s are still firing. The ship is now moving at a lowered 10 knots, has taken another hit. Look at that waterline. Well, below the waterline rather. Lots of hits under the water. Those will be letting in the ocean. See what she's capable of doing from this point. And yes, one of the propulsion systems is yellow, not functioning as expected. This ship is crippled. Well, maybe not. We've had another hit. Oh, big hit. I saw it there. And it looks like it's only minor damage, maybe. Lots of minorly damaged systems. 15cm magazine for one of these turrets has been damaged. And still firing with the 11 inches. Malaya's speed falling even more. Oh, and that might have knocked her engines out completely. Propulsion all yellow, not functioning. Engine is fine, but the propulsion systems, she's dead in the water. And still, Scharnhorst and Gneisenau pepper her with 11-inch rounds. But they've used up more than half of what they have. They'll have to resupply after this. I wonder if there's a resupply ship nearby. As we can see, Malaya is still firing. Oh, but now she does have an inoperable turret. X turret on the very stern has been rendered inoperable. Currently not destroyed, but that fire, if it gets worse, you can see the damage control teams are focusing on propulsion. Of course, there's a medium risk fire on the stern as well. They have to get their ship moving. But the high angle control system, I think that's nearly completely knocked out as we've taken another hit here. The ship is not particularly low in the water. She has got lower, but she's not all the way down as you might expect. The ship has lost its 4-inch weapon magazines, or at least most of them. And some of her 6-inch guns are knocked out as well. Her secondary batteries are pretty much screwed. But she's still opening fire with her 380mm guns. And the German fire just isn't accurate enough. And Scharnhorst has taken yet another shell. But the German battleship still going. Oh, and it's another fire. They need to get that under control as the torpedo launchers are now damaged. Type 285. What is that again?
Hit track 70.
I'm not sure, it doesn't say. I'm not sure what the Type 285 is, but it can't be helpful if the ship loses it. Ship's picking up speed again as it's taken yet another under the waterline shell, and her speed is now down to 5 knots. But this ship is still largely combat effective as there's another fire erupting from Bruno turret. But the turret itself is still functional.
We've been hit.
Yet another shell landing on Scharnhorst, yet another landing on Malaya. And it does look like Scharnhorst is potentially listing. It says listing by 2 degrees. And I don't think that's just the ocean roll. Or maybe it is. Scharnhorst is definitely lower in the water by the bow. But Gneisenau, of course, is still completely healthy. Funnily enough, Malaya is landing more shells on Scharnhorst now, and look at this! Scharnhorst is probably going to have to put in for more serious repairs at this point. One of the 11-inch magazines has been lightly damaged. In fact, both 2 of them, the fore turret for Anton and the rear turret for Kaiser, have been damaged. And in fact, the one fore turret Kaiser has actually received some more moderate damage. I believe it will still be functional, yes, still firing. But this ship is wounded now. In fact, she's really low in the water at the front. Even though she's technically not got that much flooding, It's more all over, but mostly it concentrated in the bow. Malaya, on the other hand, has not taken as much flooding damage as I would have expected, as Scharnhorst has taken yet another hit. If this is how the Scharnhorsts would react against Malaya, I'd hate to see how they react, well, how they fare against Rodney. Scharnhorst is now listing at 2 degrees, largely. She's turning to starboard now, and that's lessened it a little bit, but her speed is low enough that her list is definitely apparent. Those 15-inch shells are definitely doing damage against this German vessel.
Track 7001.
What is the situation? Rudder still knocked out. Oh, there's a... what is that? That would explain why the aft most 15-inch turret is out of action. The weapon magazine has been destroyed. She hasn't exploded, but yes, essentially that gun is completely out of action, and in fact the Y turret is out of action at the moment as well. And the Malaya is now reduced to half of her initial firepower. Meanwhile, the 2 Scharnhorsts are still firing with their complete full firepower, as the propulsion systems are on the verge of being entirely knocked out. But even though Malaya is crippled, she's still putting up a fight of her own. Scharnhorst is now taking some more serious damage. Type 285, I believe that might be a fire control system of some sort, is becoming more and more damaged, but she's only down to 68 shells, as is Gneisenau. At this rate, the 2 ships are going to run out of ammunition, and they're going to have to turn tail and run. That is the disadvantage of only having 450 rounds of 11-inch ammunition. They are going through it extremely quickly.
Hit track 700.
And even though these 2 battleships have peppered Malaya, she's still afloat. And she's still putting out damaging hits. She may only be down to 4 of her initial 8 guns, but she's still putting down accurate fire. The German fire control is definitely lacking here. The lack of radar is preventing them from hitting as often as they need to. 48 shells left on Scharnhorst and Gneisenau. In fact, Scharnhorst is down to 5 knots. Look how low she is in the water. Her freeboard is very low at this stage. It's washing up on the decks. Down to 39 rounds. Soon enough, both of the German battleships will be entirely out of ammunition. Of course, if they had been able to get closer, this battle would have gone very differently. They could have potentially got their secondary batteries and their torpedoes involved. But of course, that's not what a battleship's meant to do.
001.
Malaya's put the fires out. But her engine and propulsion systems still out of action. Ship has a very slight list to port. That's because her flooding is reasonably even. Scharnhorst has significant port side flooding. Hence why she has a 3-degree list to that side. 21 rounds. That's less than 3 full broadsides.
Hit track 7001.
12 rounds remaining in each German battleship. That's 1 full broadside and then 1 final turret. And there we go. 4 turrets are empty. In fact,
Engage. Hit track 7001.
Gneisenau. Oh, there we go, come on.
74. Hell my. Engage track 7001. Salvo fire.
She's down to just 1 shell. Good night, Scharnhorst.
Turn to course.
It's time to run. You're not going to do anything with your 150mm guns. Entirely out of ammunition, pretty much.
Engage track 7001. Salvo fire.
It would be unwise to attempt further engagement. And there we go, Gneisenau has just fired the last of her ammunition.
Turn to course. 3.
Turn tail and run.
Maneuvering eye. Roger, RTB. Roger, RTB.
Scharnhorst managed to get some speed back. 15 knots, it's probably the most she's going to do as she fires off the last of her 11-inch rounds. And Malaya is still floating. She is a wreck. She will probably need to be towed back to the nearest British base for repair, but she still has plenty of 380mm rounds left. She will be hounding these 2 vessels for as long as she can. Forming air ops, I see, that's why.
Roger, roger.
Yes, ignore that for now. The planes can fly straight. Follow the waypoints. Turn away and run back to Germany. Scharnhorst is basically a submarine at this point. Might as well hand it over to the U-boat force. The ships don't have to run far. Once they reach 16 nautical miles away, Malaya will not be able to fire on them anymore. But this has been a pretty dismal defeat for the Germans, and it probably wouldn't have gone much better even if they had engaged at their maximum range of 22 nautical miles. The fire they put out would have been even more inaccurate. So what would you call this? I mean, tactically, I suppose you could call this a draw. Yes, Malaya is basically out of action. She's still got 2 guns left, but she can't move by herself. Unless her damage control teams can bring everything back up to snuff. She won't be able to chase them down, her damage is too substantial, but she has reasonably minimal flooding based on where her waterline is. Gneisenau is completely untouched. She just needs to be reloaded. Scharnhorst, on the other hand, has sustained some pretty substantial damage. And her flooding is really quite alarming. She's got flooding in all 5 major compartments, and in all but one of her sub-compartments. Queen Elizabeth has flooding in every major compartment, and yet again, all but one in the sub-compartment. So, oh, and she has actually managed to bring one of her knocked-out 15-inch guns back online, and now she's got 6 guns. Scharnhorst now has to run. I might as well recover these planes now, since they are running away. Gneisenau will be fine. Scharnhorst, though, might still cop a few more shells for her trouble, even though it is quite clear that she doesn't want any part of this anymore. I suppose you could call this a strategic victory for the British. One German battleship significantly damaged. She'll have to spend some time in dry dock, undergoing repairs, as another shell has hit the middle. Of course, Malaya's going to do everything she can to knock the Scharnhorst out. Though Scharnhorst has less than 1 nautical mile to go before she is completely out of range of the British battleship. I don't think anyone's going to be sunk today. But yes, we can see damage, 60% damage on Malaya. Only 33 on Scharnhorst, but I mean the flooding that Scharnhorst has taken, that would take her before any hull destruction. Yikes! Back up to 15 knots, and Scharnhorst making her way out of danger. Even if Malaya has something else to say about that. And we'll put it at 5 times speed, see how those shells come in. 15 knots is quite sluggish for this ship, that's half its usual speed. It's gonna have to do. What is she gonna be able to do about that flooding? Probably not a lot. They'll repair the systems as best they can, but more shells are landing and she gets slowed down again. But at this rate, she is now out of danger. Malaya can no longer engage, she's dead in the water and she is now outranged. And Scharnhorst lives to fight another day. Albeit with her dignity between her legs. Tail between her legs, rather. So, is that how the battle could have gone between these 3 ships? The 2 German ships peppered Malaya for all they were worth, and yes, they did essentially knock the ship out. But she'll get going again. Her own damage control is bringing her back online slowly. She'll never catch the German ships, as she does manage to get going again at a measly 4.5 knots. But the Germans have suffered a much more ignominious defeat here. The 2 German battleships unable to do any significant damage. I mean, they did do significant damage, they just couldn't sink her. As Malaya's damage control brings up to a little bit more respectable speed of 12 knots. I think Scharnhorst is at the speed, the fastest speed she's going to achieve at this rate. 15 knots. That's limping speed. I think we'll call it there, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching. If you have indeed watched this far, don't forget to like the video, comment and subscribe if you want to see more. In the meantime, yes, thank you for watching. Suggest anything else you might want to see, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, and good night.